All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Wednesday, October 16th, and this is All in Horns on Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson and Jake Jimerson. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, 5 days a week. Tuesday through Friday, we drop these episodes at noon, and on Saturdays, we will give you our immediate reaction following the Texas Longhorn game. This week, Jake, we have a big one. It is the number 5 Georgia Bulldogs coming in at the number 1 team in the land, the Texas Longhorns, on the 40 acres at DKR. Night game, 6:30. College game day is going to be there. This is the last top 5 matchup, or the first top 5 matchup at DKR since 2006. Number 2 Texas took on number 1 Ohio State following the national championship season, as Colt McCoy took over for his first start as not his first start as a Texas Longhorn, but his first big game as a Texas Longhorn. And Jake, the tides are a little bit different here for the Texas Longhorns hosting a top 5 team in Georgia. College game day is going to be there. The crowd is going to be rocking. You had a question of, could this be the largest attendance ever?
Yeah, I mean, it's assuming for some reason the additions or whatever didn't make less seatings, which I don't think that is the case. I imagine this will be the highest attended game in the history of DKR. You know, they're going to try to fit every single person they can in that stadium. And also, Georgia travels well. There's going to be a good amount of red in the seats for this game, and not because Texas fans are bad. It's like when Texas goes elsewhere. You know, when Texas went to Michigan, there's a lot of orange in that yellow. There's going to be some red in there too. Georgia fans travel well, and this is one of these matchups where this is why you moved to the SEC. You wanted to be a top team in the country, and you wanted to go against other top teams in the country and bring them into Austin and have incredible moments for Austin as a city and for the University of Texas and its football program. And this is this first big moment. And what a weekend to have it with F1 going on at the same time. I think Eminem is performing at the F1 as well. And then I believe Austin City Limits will still be going. So it's a crazy weekend.
I feel like ACL is wrapped up now.
It might be wrapped up now.
I think they did their 2 weekends. I think the second weekend is always Texas OU weekend because they play it the first weekend too.
Yeah, that sounds right. But
who was it? Dua Lipa had she repped her Texas Longhorn jersey following the Red River game during her performance at ACL. So yeah, horns up for Dua.
Yeah, and I thought ACL was going on, but apparently it's just F1, and this game happening is making Austin insane. Hotel prices right now are like $1,300 a night for regular hotels.
Yeah.
Because people travel in from all over the world for the F1 game, and people are traveling in from all around the country at the very least, if not all over the world, for this Texas-Georgia game. It is going to be a wild weekend in Austin. And it is going to be one of the most incredible environments, if not the most incredible environment we've ever seen at DKR.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you, Jake. We didn't discuss you talking about this off air or anything like that, but I know that you have recently gotten into F1 and you've been watching documentaries. You've got yourself a little simulator in your basement. It's like literally if you turned your webcam like a couple of inches to the right or left, you'd see his whole setup there. Talk a little bit about F1. Get people interested in it. Get the people of Austin interested in why F1 is so cool and why it's important that it's coming into Austin.
They're drivers going over 200 miles per hour that are making turns and have to have the reaction times that don't seem humanly possible. If you want to get hyped up about watch Drive to Survive on Netflix, it's fantastic. B, go on YouTube, just search any race. Monaco's a good one if you really want to see something wild, and just search to watch one lap from the driver's perspective. If you just search driver cam F1 race, something will come up. And watch what they do in real time. It looks like you put a YouTube video on and put it at 10x speed. It does not look humanly possible. The reaction time. Freakish.
Yeah, the reaction time that these drivers have. I mean, they say that these guys aren't athletes, that they're training different ways to be as quickly and precise as they possibly can be.
Also, it gets like 150 degrees in those seats and where they're sitting, and they have to be in incredible shape, and they have to work out their neck because this isn't, and I went to a NASCAR race recently. I actually enjoy going to NASCAR races and watching it live. I watch some of the playoff races sometimes on TV, but F1's a different beast from the standpoint of it's like flying a fighter jet. You have to prepare your neck for the G forces that you're going to feel when you're turning. And it can, give you an adrenaline rush similar to flying a fighter jet. So it's fun. It's cool. I haven't been to one in person yet, but I really want to, and I'm sure I'll make it down to Austin for one of these races one of these years, just because race cars go fast. It's fun.
Dudes, fast cars, cool. Like that. We're simple creatures, Jake. It doesn't take a lot to entertain us. Let's get back on track. I knew that you were interested in more in F1, and you've been getting into it more recently. And I was like, you know what, perfect time for us to kind of like give a little bit of a.
I'll give a tour of my little driving rig one episode for fun. Maybe during a bye week or something. That'll be a little fun thing.
Or you know what? How about you could do a social media, like do a short on our YouTube page and just do a little blog. Perfect. And just make a little bit of content, throw it up there on the page and let people check out your system. Because I know we're going off beat here, but a quick little it takes I first time I went and visited Jake with his driving simulator, and I'm talking like it's got the whole rig. You sit in it, you got the steering wheel, you've got the whole like almost 360 view. It's a legit setup, ladies and gentlemen. It's freaking sweet. So I sat in, and he was like, "Hey, just take a couple practice laps, like just get used to it, kind of get a feel for it." So I was doing that. I went down I did like 2 or 3 laps. It felt like, and I was just kind of chilling. I was like, okay, I'm kind of getting the hang of it. I'm starting to get a feel for it, and I was down there for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games for the Texas Longhorns a couple years back. And I was like, man, how long have I been in here or whatever? When do we need to leave? He goes, dude, you've been sitting in there for like 3 hours. I was like, oh, I thought this was 30 minutes. I thought I was just doing a little test run here. 30 minutes or 3 hours felt like 30 minutes. I mean, you get lost in that thing.
It's the ultimate escape, get home from work, jump in an iRacing race, which you can do oval, road, all the different races, all the different cars. I even have the different steering wheels. I have the, like circle steering wheel for oval racing. And then I have the F1 style race. It's fun. It's just a lot of fun. If you haven't ever driven one, there's a lot of places where you can find them and rent it for 30 minutes and drive it. Give it a try because it's fun.
Yeah. All right, Jake, going into this Texas game, the line opened up at 3.5. It is currently at 4, even with injury updates and things of that nature. Looking at kind of the head-to-head, not head-to-head, but I went down the rankings of where these teams line up. Now, I'll go into more details later on this week, maybe on Thursday, Friday's episode. Not sure which one. We're still kind of up in the air on a special guest. We're still trying to iron out some details, see if they can make it on the show. If they can't, I've got a perfect segment for us that we're going to go down and compare where Texas lines up, total offense versus Georgia's total defense, passing offense versus Georgia's passing defense. And that's for both teams. And I'll line them up and kind of where these two teams match up. I've already sent that over to Jake. We've got it queued up for a future episode. But looking at where this is, Jake, do you think 3.5, a 4-point spread, do you think that's fair going into this game?
I would probably put it at 2.5 to Texas. I think a very likely scenario in this game is Texas winning a game 35-32, something like that.
I know that's not your actual projection, but do you see it being a high scoring game?
I do. I am very high on this Texas defense, but they have not played a even competent passing offense. And I think that's going to hurt them a little bit in this game. And I know they go against it in practice, but still you're going against a different team that runs a different scheme. I think the secondary is going to at least struggle early on, and then they may get better. And part of it's going to have to do with the pass rush. And I hope I'm wrong. If they hold them to, I think the number I told you earlier today was like, if they hold them to like less than 24 points, they're cemented as an elite defense and potentially one of the, if not the best defenses ever for Texas in its football program's history. But even under like 28 points, I think if you hold a team under 30 points while Sarkisian is your head coach at Texas, you're probably going to win just about every game. But I do think this is going to be a higher scoring game. Georgia puts up points. Their defense has been not as good, especially the secondary. They really don't give up much rushing the ball. They are attackable through the passing game. And so I think Texas will exploit that very well, just like they did against Michigan, just like they did against Oklahoma. And then that typically opens up the run later on. And I think Georgia's going to have success through the air because I think it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for this defense to go from playing. Who's the best passing offense they've played? Who would you say is the best passing offense they played to this point?
For Georgia?
No, for Texas. The best
God.
passing offense Texas has played against until this game.
Mississippi State.
Yeah, I mean,
is that fair?
It's Mississippi State, it can't be Michigan.
It can't be Michigan. I'm certainly not giving it to Oklahoma. I'm just not.
No, Oklahoma's worse in the passing game than Michigan. At least when Michigan had Warrant with Orgy, they really can't throw, but they're just better at running it. So exactly, the best passing team.
I can't give it to UTSA.
It's probably Mississippi State because they just had Van Buren just had over 300 yards passing against Georgia. That is at least a game against a good team that put up a lot of yardage. Georgia's a lot better on offense than Mississippi State, especially throwing the ball. Running the ball hasn't been great for them, and it'll still be a key to stop it. But this is finally the first week of the season where we can talk about a different game plan for the defense. Mm-hmm. The secondary has to get that stink off of them from the Washington game, and this is the game to do it because Georgia's going to throw the ball deep. If they get beat like they did a couple times against Mississippi State, those will be completed for touchdowns. And they were not against Mississippi State. And that's why I think this will be a high-scoring game, because I think they're going to struggle early, and I think they're going to get beat a couple times deep because Georgia has the speed to expose that.
Well, Sark mentioned in a press conference on Monday how Georgia mirrors Texas, at least in the terms of personnel. I want to have this discussion with you, Jake. He went more so based on, look, their wide receivers are fast. They put a lot of speed on the outside. They got quickness on the inside. They've got big tight ends. We know their history with tight ends when it comes to Georgia, whether that's a Brock Bowers or, insert name here. Now, they don't necessarily have a Brock Bowers at tight end, but then again, that's a kind of a once-in-a-generational talent you get at that position. So, strong running game, big offensive line, and a veteran-led quarterback who has seen a lot of football, played a lot of football, been there, done that, and has had success at the college football ranks. And then on the defensive side of the ball, speed everywhere, attacking the ball. Jake, do you think that Georgia's team mirrors Texas, and do you think that is kind of the successful version as to kind of what Texas has done and implemented, and kind of how these two teams match up? Is it more so a matter of they mirror each other and it's your best players are going to beat their best players, or are there certain criteria to where like Texas passing game has got to beat their secondary or vice versa? What are some matchups that you're looking forward to, or a lot of them push?
There's going to be a lot more push this week than there has been in any other week. And there's going to be, I think both teams have advantages in certain areas. But to answer the original question, I do think these programs, personnel wise, are built very similarly. Big in the trenches, a lot of speed with the skill positions, kind of pocket presence, pocket passer type quarterbacks. Beck and Ears are both capable of running it, but they are obviously throw first quarterbacks. And so I do think they're very similar in that way. You would probably say Texas is built like Georgia, since Georgia's been,
been there a little bit longer.
Yeah, they've been there longer. They've won 2 out of the last 3 national titles. They've earned that right. But they're similar. Georgia probably hasn't run the ball quite as well as Texas this year. They have just over 800 rushing yards on the year at 4.6 yards a carry for the whole team combined. Throwing the ball, though, if you just look, they have more passing yards this season than Texas. So as of right now, I'm going to say the biggest advantage for Georgia is they get to go against a Texas secondary that hasn't gone against a good passing offense. So I'd give an advantage to to Georgia's wide receivers against Texas's secondary, but I would also give Texas the advantage on the other side of the ball with their wide receivers against Georgia's secondary. And that plus whether Texas can get a very good pass rush against an offensive line that is definitely the best offensive line they've played against at the least.
Yeah.
Whether they can generate pressure sending 4 or 5 men, or whether they're going to have to get a little bit more creative with blitz packages to create pressure in this game. Those are going to be the kind of 3 key areas that I'm looking at in this game.
Yeah, one thing that I do think Texas can find an advantage in is the running game. However, Georgia, for whatever reason, now they have all the personnel of having a successful running game and running attack. However, it's just not translated on the field. I believe they're sitting somewhere in the 90s, 93rd in rushing offense, something along those lines, which is pretty dreadful overall. Texas, I think, sits somewhere in the mid-20s in the rushing attack game in terms of nationwide rankings. And so I think that is where there needs to be a huge advantage. Texas has to make this a one-dimensional game defensively. And Georgia might want that. Georgia might want them to force them to pass the ball. If they want to rely on their passing game, that's fine. But Texas can't allow Etienne to just demolish them and run through them and get big yardage and chunk yardage at a time and allow Beck and the passing game to kind of do what they want with having the advantage of having a successful running game. I think Texas has to shut that down first and foremost. Secondly, I think Texas needs to put pressure on Beck. You and I talked about it off air, is that Beck is a really, really good quarterback when he's comfortable and when he's in rhythm. And when things are flowing correctly, he doesn't miss. He's very capable of beating anybody in the country whenever things go the right way. When you hit him, you make him uncomfortable. You're getting pressure on him, even if it's just a defender brushing his shoulder while he's throwing the ball. And he's just feeling that pressure there all game long. As the game progresses, he tends to make mistakes. And I think that is another big thing. So stop the run, pressure Beck. I'm not even saying resulting in sacks. Pressure him, make him feel uncomfortable, make him roll out, make sure that you're shutting down passing lanes on the defensive line up front and with those linebackers.
Yeah, it may not result in sacks, but it could result in interceptions. Right. Go back and watch the Alabama game. A lot of his interceptions were the result of really good pressure, were the result of staying sound in your zones and him not seeing some of the defenders in the middle of the field and throwing a pick to them. I think the Texas linebackers are going to have to be really sharp in coverage in this game. And so it's going to be I'm very excited to finally see what I think is a much improved secondary, what I think could be an elite secondary, but this is the game to show it. We're going to find out whether they're just improved and really, really good, or if they're elite. This is going to be the game that decides that.
Now, Jake, talking about the run game a little bit, does the Texas Longhorns have a new running back, one, and Trey Wisner?
I'm a Jaden Blue fan, but as of right now, you almost have to ride the hot hand. And that doesn't mean not give Blue carries, but we talked about that 40-40-20 split. It might be more of a 50-30-10 split. Gibson's getting less carries, I think mainly just because he's a true freshman. He can't really pass protect. He's not going to provide you much in the passing game. He's more of a short yardage goal line type back for this year, with obviously hopes to be much better. So I think reducing his percentage now kind of makes sense down to that 10%, maybe even 5% range.
I was going to say, yeah.
Just depending on down and situation. I think he can provide a lot on a 3rd and 1, on a 1st and goal from the 1 yard line. But yeah, I mean, Trey Wisner, he's just running better than Jaden Blue is right now. He has less carries, more yards. He's averaging about 6.2 yards per clip, while Jaden Blue is averaging just under 5 yards a carry. And that is a significant difference. And if you just watch both of them run, one thing I've really noticed about Wisner, especially in this Oklahoma game, his patience has improved a lot since even the start of the year. He's a little bit more patient when it's a zone or a power scheme, and you got to give that offensive line. But there's a fine line between patience and knowing when to hit the hole. And that's where he has improved so much. He knows when to hit the hole. He breaks a lot of tackles. He makes people miss. He's making those people miss in that second level, which is what Jashard Choice talked about, wanting this running back group to evolve in. And Jaden Blue has been a little bit injured this year. The fumbles, I think, really hurt his confidence. He was better against OU. He's still very good in the passing game.
Yeah.
But on just the straight up running game, as of right now, Wisner is the hotter hand.
Jake, talking about press conferences. Now, we've talked about Sark's pressers. Well, Kirby Smart also had a press conference, and he had some very kind of cool things, very respectable things to say about Coach Sark and the Texas Longhorns. He said, first of all, they're for real in the trenches, both offensively and defensively. They're built like an SEC team, and then also went into his personal relationship with Sark, and that he does a yearly trip with them. Talk about an all-time great trip if you're just a football dork like we are, Jake, in just terms of scheme and let's get the defensive side of the ball, let's get the offensive side of the ball, let's get these two brilliant minds talking about it just over a couple of beers. But says he has a lot of respect for Sark. It's kind of cool to see that Sark has been one of the guys that is most highly touted, highly respected coaches in all the land and the college football landscapes, whether you hear that from a Nick Saban, whether you hear that from a Kirby Smart, whoever you hear it from, anytime Sark is mentioned, it's typically of a very high regard.
Yeah, we just saw a very good offensive coordinator go against a very good defensive coordinator in Sarkisian versus Brent Venables. And now we get the ultimate test, the final boss with Steve Sarkisian against Kirby Smart. And you mentioned it. How fun would it be to sit in and talk to those two guys? You get one of the best offensive minds in football and one of the best defensive minds in football, and just get to hear both of their perspectives. I'd love to hear the meetings going on both campuses right now of how Texas is preparing for Georgia's defense, how Georgia is preparing on defense for Texas's offense, and just kind of how those preparations are going, because you're going against two schemes that are considered to be the best, some of the best, if not the best in college football.
I want to say something real quick though. It's been bothering me a little bit. Georgia's defense is not Georgia's defense this year and not the national championship winning defenses. They're just not. They gave up 31 points to Mississippi State. I know they kind of had a drag out knockout battle with Kentucky. They gave up 30 plus some odd points to Alabama, back-to-back weeks with giving up 30 plus points to their opponent. Or no, I'm sorry. I skipped a week, but Alabama, and then they played South Carolina or somebody, but gave up Auburn. Yeah. And they only allowed like 3 points against Auburn or something like that, but gave up 31 against South Carolina or Mississippi State. Jake, is it wrong for me or naive of me to think that this Georgia defense is attackable? You can get a lot of yards on this team. You can put up a lot of points. Like I think Sark is almost maybe seeing something of like, you know what? I think we can exploit these guys and really have our way with them on the offensive side of the ball if we play our A. Like, you can't just go in and drag your feet and think, oh yeah, we're going to put up 30 points. But I think Sark is like, man, there's some holes on this secondary that we should be able to exploit and put up some big numbers on.
To a point, I think running the ball, I think Texas can probably run the ball better in this game when you compare the two teams. But I do think you're not going to just line up in the first quarter and be running at 4 yards, 5 yards a carry against them. Their secondary is very gettable. With that said, I think they're very attackable, but Quinn Ewers is going to have to look like Quinn Ewers. He can't look like
True. Yes.
Not only the first quarter against OU, but that whole game. He was 2 of 7 in the intermediate passing against Oklahoma with 1 interception. And I think like 20 something yards on those passes. He is typically around 70% with more attempts and more completions in that range on a per game basis. That cannot happen against Georgia. If that happens against Georgia, they will lose this football game, because passing the football is how you're going to attack this Georgia team, which the Mississippi State, they did only give up 3 points to Clemson and only 188 total yards in that game. That is worth mentioning. Clemson is back in the top 10. It was 385 yards they gave up against Mississippi State. By the way, they had 605 yards on offense in that game. Their offense is putting up yards and points. They are turning it over. They had 2 turnovers in that game. Turnovers cost them in the Bama game. Because don't forget, in that Bama game, to be fair to the defense, the offense put them in miserable situations.
True. Very true. Yeah. And
they
so
had 4 turnovers in that game to Alabama's 1, and they still almost came back and won that game.
So obviously Georgia's not the number 1 team in the country. They're top 5, and they should be top 5, absolutely. But here are struggles. They struggled at Kentucky week 3, 13-12. They go on the road to Alabama, lose that one in Tuscaloosa, 41-34 in an all-time classic. They bounce back, good easy win over Auburn, 31-13, and then they come back on their back-to-back home games against Mississippi State, who Mississippi State is basically this year's Vanderbilt, sneaking away with a 10-point victory, at least letting them hang in there. Maybe Georgia controlled that entire game. I didn't go back and I haven't watched that game. I don't know what that game felt like, looked like, whatever. But to have a Mississippi State team at least hang in there towards the very end and only win that game by 10, 41-31, there were some Texas fans who were, calling for Sark's job in the first half of the Mississippi State game. And Texas ended up, handling that one pretty easily. So this is not necessarily just your run-of-the-mill Georgia team that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 seasons of just taking care of business in the regular season and blowing their opponent out, is all I'm saying.
Especially on the defensive end, I do think their offense is
because there was
very
a time,
good, especially if they stop turning the ball over.
There was a time where Georgia's defense was giving up. I mean, there was I think one season, I want to say 2022, 2023, where their defense didn't even give up a touchdown until like week 6 or week 7. Like it was some stupid, ridiculous stat. Like they're not at that caliber this year. They're just not.
No, they're very gettable especially through the air. I will say that Georgia did control that Mississippi State game. They were up 27-10 at half. They went up 34-10 early in the third quarter. Mississippi State brought it back to a 10-point game before the fourth quarter. So it almost looks like there was a little bit of those games where you're not playing a very good team. You get up, you kind of let off the pedal, and they're still capable college football players. So they end up, coming back a little bit. And then Georgia went right back up 41-24, and then Mississippi State scored at the end to make it look a little bit closer. But still, it just shows that this Georgia defense is gettable. Like you said, you do not have to be intimidated by this Georgia defense like you would have been even last year, and then obviously the 2 years before that.
I think that's my point. We'll get into way more Texas, Georgia. We have the rest of this week. We've got Thursday, Friday. We'll give our final predictions as well for that game come Friday. And then obviously we'll give our immediate reactions on Saturday. Jake, before we get off real quick shout out to the number 7 Texas Longhorn volleyball team. They are on a roll right now. They have absolutely dominated the SEC so far. They've only dropped 1 set in the last 5 games going into conference play. Jake, this team is playing really well. They're coming off of a win over number 12 Kentucky on the road in a 3-0 win there for the Longhorns. And so just a quick shout out for the volleyball team. I know you've got a couple of things you want to say about them as well.
Yeah, I mean, it seems very similar to last year where they struggled a little bit, maybe a little bit more this year out of the gate. And now they're really getting going once they've hit conference play. Like you said, they've dropped 1 set in 5 games. They've now won on the road twice in a row against ranked opponents, 3-0 in both of them. And so Texas volleyball is definitely going to be something we're following as the year goes along. And as, especially once it gets into the tournament, because this looks like a team who is hopefully going to bring an SEC championship to Texas here in the fall season, and then also maybe try to bring home a 3rd straight national title.
Now, Jake, we also said too, before the regular season or before the conference season started, we said, look, they should dominate the SEC. They're going into conference season. They have 0 ranked opponents left remaining on the schedule. However, that could change as the season progresses. Yeah, they've played like 3 ranked teams in the SEC.
And A&M's receiving votes as well.
Yeah,
And they won that
and
game at A&M.
Right. So it should be a fun season, but like you said, on the road to an SEC title and hopefully a 3rd straight national title. Well, Jake, that is going to do it for All in Horns today. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. And as always, I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson on Rogue Sports Network each and every day, Tuesday through Friday at noon. And then following the Texas game on Saturdays, we will give you our immediate reaction. So like, share, subscribe, keep up the good work. All of our wonderful listeners, we appreciate it. Again, your interaction with the show, your views, your likes, your subscriptions keeps us providing you daily content for all things Texas Longhorns. With that being said, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.